Hey guys, I want to welcome you back to the King of Glory series. This is session 4. And before I get going, I just want to maybe even interrupt myself and point you toward one of our great resources. The reason I'm doing this is because I'm so personally invested in our Emmaus Online course. And I think this is our 5th year of running the course, and I've had the honor to be involved in it from the very beginning. And because of that, I'm biased. And I wanted to just take a moment here at the beginning of my own teaching to point you to that resource. You can go to faistudios.org and find Emmaus Online, or you can, I think we'll maybe have a link here within the video. So thank you. Here's what I'm going to be doing the next few weeks. We have introduced the series and got a bit into the kingdom. Last week I talked about how the kingdom is an eschatological gift, and much, if not most, of what we have to realize from the kingdom is going to be realized at the return of the Lord. That doesn't mean that all of the kingdom is out there ahead of us. There's certainly, as I said last week, wherever the king goes, the kingdom goes. There's much for us to understand about the kingdom in the life of Jesus. And so what I want to do for the next 3 weeks is I'm going to take a look at 3 different vignettes, 3 different stories or encounters from the life of Jesus that I believe point us to his view of his kingship. That's important. And then once we're done with that, I'll spend a bit of time talking about the early church's understanding of the kingship of Jesus. Then we'll move into what I believe to be the crisis that we have today, a crisis of supremacy or a lack of awareness or understanding of the kingship of Jesus. And so that's where we're going to be moving. It'll take us a bunch of weeks a bunch of sessions to get through all of that. But this is where we are. I'm going to start today in Matthew chapter 17. This is going to be the focus of our time together, and then I'll kind of build there. But let me just read Matthew 17. I'll read verses 22 and going forward to the end of chapter 17. When they came together in Galilee, he said to them, "The Son of Man is going to be betrayed into the hands of men. They will kill him, and on the 3rd day he will be raised to life." And the disciples were filled with grief. They didn't get it. Verse 24, after Jesus and his disciples arrived in Capernaum, the collectors of the 2 drachma tax came to Peter and asked, "Doesn't your teacher pay the temple tax?" "Yeah, he does," he replied. When Peter came into the house, Jesus was the first to speak. "What do you think, Simon?" he asked. "From whom do the kings of the earth collect duty and taxes? From their own sons or from others?" "From others," Peter answered. "Then the sons are exempt. The sons are free." Jesus said to him, But so that we may not offend them, go to the lake and throw out your line. And take the first fish you catch and open its mouth, and you will find a 4 drachma coin. Take it and give it to them for my tax and yours." So this is a real interesting passage to help us get at, I think, the kingship of Jesus. Maybe one you've not ever stopped at before to think through Jesus's view of his kingship. But I'll build our way there because even though I've talked about this a bit, it's worth rehearsing. Jesus, we might say he, even just from the human side of Jesus, comes by some awareness of kingship, honestly, just by growing up. We'll remember, if you go all the way back into the time of King David, that David prophesies of the coming king. Psalm 110, he writes, "The Lord says to my Lord, sit at my right hand until I make your enemies a footstool for your feet." The throne being the place to sit, the feet being the place for him to rest his feet, and the enemies being a footstool. "The Lord will extend your mighty scepter from Zion, saying, rule in the midst of your enemies." And this passage establishes that David foresees a future king who is greater than he is, and one who David recognizes as Lord. And then that same psalm continues in verses 4 and 5. "You are a priest forever in the order of Melchizedek," who was both a priest and a king. "The Lord is at your right hand. He will crush kings on the day of his wrath." And so prior to the birth of Jesus. And I'm just pulling this out as a representative example. There was a prophecy of one who would come in time. We'll get at this even more deeply next week. And then even as Gabriel visits Mary to tell her that she would bear Jesus as her child, he says this to her in Luke chapter 1. You will conceive and give birth to a son, and you are to call him Jesus. He will be great and will be called the Son of the Most High. The Lord God will give him the throne of his father David, and he will reign. He will be king over Jacob's descendants forever. His kingdom will never end. This is prior to him even being born. Once Jesus is alive and kicking, probably toddler Jesus, you have these magi from the east, or wise men, who come and ask King Herod in a way that creates a massive problem at the beginning of Jesus's life. Here's what they ask. Where is the one who has been born King of the Jews? We saw his star when it rose and have come to worship him. And again, we'll get more into this in the next two sessions, because we're going to look at two more stories about how Jesus views himself as king. It's interesting, this phrase, King of the Jews, is never used except by Gentiles about Jesus. Jesus never directly calls himself king, but his actions speak pretty loudly. He announces his kingdom is at hand the very first time that he comes out into the public as a public preacher and minister. And then he repeatedly preaches. He repeatedly makes the subject matter of his preaching and teaching the kingdom, whether it's in parables or even behind closed doors, even more so. So the passage that I opened up with, Matthew 17, is an interesting one, as I said, to focus in from the perspective of kingship, but it's very insightful. You know, if death and taxes are the two unavoidable or the only certainties in life, then you don't want to offend the person who's charging you taxes. But taxation was not part of the created order. God didn't make taxes on the seventh or eighth day or something like that. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth, gave humans authority over all creation, the fish of the sea, the birds of the sky, the animals and insects of the land, but says nothing of taxes. And so where does this temple tax come from? Well, interestingly enough, it actually was established in the wilderness in Exodus 30, when God instructs Moses to take a census of the people of Israel. And he says, then each shall give a ransom for his life to the Lord when you number them, that there be no plague among them when you number them. And I'll let you read all of, if you want to hunt this out, hunt it out on your own time. Exodus 30 verses 11 through 16. Basically, the idea here is, you shall take the atonement money from the people of Israel and shall give it for the service of the tent of meeting, that it may bring the people of Israel to remembrance before the Lord, so as to make atonement for your lives. This atonement payment, this ransom for your life, later evolves into, when there's a temple established, a temple tax, which isn't the same exact thing as a tax that would later be charged by Rome, that was compulsory. You were forced to pay it. At this point, this tax that is the temple tax is really something that you should pay to be in good standing, but you don't have to pay it. And if you want to be a person who is a person of authority, then you would certainly be obligated. You'd be expected to pay this tax. And so this is kind of what we get into in chapter 17 of the book of Matthew. But let me just go back and go over this a bit and work our way there. I don't know why I shut my Bible knowing I was going to come right back to it. So basically, Jesus takes his disciples, he takes the 12 on a spiritual development retreat. He's at Capernaum, and they go up into the hills, what we today call the Golan, up to Caesarea Philippi. And he has a retreat there with them. And it's at this place that he asks the question, as they're going back and forth, who do people say that the Son of Man is? Some say Elijah, some say John the Baptist, others Jeremiah or one of the prophets. Well, but who do you say that I am? And Peter replies, you're the Christ. You're the anointed one. You're the king. This is from the Jewish perspective, this first century Jewish perspective, the coming Messiah would be one who would come to be king, to rule and reign over Israel and to conquer all of Israel's enemies. This is who the Christ would be to them, the Mashiach, the Messiah. And so he says, you're the one, you're the king, the son of the living God. And Jesus says, blessed are you, Simon, son of Jonah, for this wasn't revealed to you by man, but by my Father in heaven. Jesus doesn't say, no. He doesn't correct him. He says, he affirms him and says, that revelation you have of my kingship, that didn't come from just your careful observation. The Lord himself, the Lord God revealed this to your heart that you might see this in me. And he says, as one who has authority can only say, I will give you the keys of the kingdom. I'm giving you authority. Whatever you bind will be bound. Whatever you loose will be loosed. Who else could give him the keys? It's like, I can't give you the keys to, I can only give you the keys to my car, to my house, to my kingdom. I can't give you the keys to another. And Jesus gives us away because he can. And so in the aftermath of Jesus giving them this or affirming this revelation of his kingship, he then tells them, hey, here's where I'm going. Here's my trajectory as a king. I go to Jerusalem to be killed. He predicts his death and tells them what's going to happen. They can't take this. Peter says, no way. Jesus has to tell him to get behind him and calls him Satan. And then he's transfigured up on the mountain. They see him in his full glory. They come back down to Capernaum. And as they're on their way back down into Capernaum, as they're entering back in, Jesus tells them a second time, hey, I'm going to be betrayed into the hands of man and I'll kill him. Or they're going to kill me. And on the third day, I'll be raised from the dead. And they're filled with grief because they can't handle what he's saying. It's in that context, they come back into Capernaum. And as they're coming back in, this is when this encounter happens. There's something seriously wrong when representatives from the temple are expecting a tribute from the king, from God's anointed king. And it's ironic, but actually beautiful and clever and even funny the way Jesus ends up handling this. And so the collectors of the tax approach Peter and they say, hey, how about your guy, this guy you're following? Is he planning to pay the tax? I mean, does he pay the tax or not? And Peter, without hesitating, is like, yeah, of course he does. Because, Peter didn't have to stop and think about it. He'd been with Jesus now for a few years. He'd seen him pay the temple tax each year. But this year, something's different. Peter has just declared Jesus' kingship. And Jesus has begun to talk differently about his trajectory and what was going to happen. And Peter needed to stop and think about this a moment. And why would God's anointed king pay tribute to the temple that is his? And so when Peter goes inside, Jesus actually raises the topic, which I find quite fascinating, that in his omniscience, he's not there. I mean, it seems to indicate that he's not there when the question's raised. So when Peter comes into the house, Jesus says, hey, what do you think, Simon? From whom do earthly kings receive their taxes or contributions? From their own son or from others? And Peter says, from others. He's like, yeah, I'm thinking the same thing. Who are they to ask for a contribution from you? You are the king. And Jesus is right. So the sons of the kings are free. And this verse this verse 25, when he says, when he asks this question, it's really an exciting question, because I think it's the closest we ever see to Jesus explicitly just calling himself a king. In all of his teaching on the kingdom, he never claims directly kingship. He never says to them, like he says, I am the way, I'm the truth, I'm the life, I am the door, I am, all these I am statements. I am the bread of life. I am the light of the world. He never says, I am king. I am the king of the Jews. He doesn't say this of himself. And so he knows that his kingship comes from God. His authority is bestowed on him from heaven and not from man. So he doesn't have to defend himself. He was able to rightfully let go of everything that was his and to take this low place on earth. But now that so he doesn't have to publicly preach this, but now that he's in private with his people, those who are close to him, and in this case with Peter, someone who has received the revelation of his kingship, Jesus is free. He feels the freedom to discuss matters of regal authority, of what rights does a king have. And so Peter doesn't, he no longer knows the answer to the question, well, should Jesus pay the temple tax or not? It's weird for him to pay the tax, to make him subservient to the temple authorities, but it's dangerous for him to not pay the tax because that's an offense against the temple authorities. And Jesus is talking about them arresting him and killing him. And so, that's not cool with Peter. So what should we do here? And so King Jesus's answer is, I think, is as hilarious as it is creative. What he does to demonstrate his authority, not only over the temple authorities, but over creation itself, is he sends Peter out to collect the tax money from a fish. I mean, think about this is the nature of miracles. This is like a double miracle. There's the miracle of omniscience, that Jesus would know the topic, but he also would know the tax. He also would know the amount, the situation. So he could put these 4 drachma, have these 4 drachma miraculously inside this fish. So there's this omniscience miracle, and there's this practical miracle of the coinage being inside the fish. And then Peter can go catch the fish, collect the tax, and he can pay it to those who are making the demands, so they don't have any grounds of accusing Jesus of an offense. And because this is what Jesus says. He says, we don't want to offend them. Jesus is wise. This is practical wisdom here to say, look, you don't do things out of order, out of their time. And he has a lot to say about authority, about, rendering to Caesar what's Caesar's and rendering up to God what's God's. And so he makes this happen. And I think Peter is able to laugh all the way to the lake, or at least all the way back from the lake, when he knows that he is serving the true King of creation. When he comes back with the tax money in hand, he knows that his king came not to be served, but to serve. And so, but I guess the question becomes, what is the basis of this freedom that Jesus is claiming here, the freedom of sonship that he's claiming in this passage? And I think that you have to see that the tax that's being demanded or being levied, it has a double meaning. First, as I already told you, it originated as an atonement or a ransom for the soul. And second, it's devoted to the temple and the worship of the temple. And now, in both of these aspects, the Lord is alleging his true sonship as the reason why he's exempt from it. Even though he's going to go ahead and submit to it, he says, I'm exempt because of who I am. And that is, first of all, to say that Jesus can claim that he has no right to, or has no need of making payment, because he has no need of a ransom for his soul. There's never a word that drops from his lips that indicates even the smallest flaw or failure or defect or imperfection or anything that would, let alone some sort of actual transgression. So Jesus is able to take his position outside of the circle of sinful men who, if we even go back to the origination in Exodus 30, at the purity of this, Jesus would not needed to have made atonement for his sin or for his soul even back then. And so it doesn't apply to him in the same way. But there's a second way, that you could gather maybe that Jesus is free from this. And I would say this one points to the cross. He sends Peter to pay the tribute for him for a very specific reason. He said, so that we don't offend them. So that's, as I said, just simply some sort of piece of practical wisdom to prevent anybody from, on the outside, from stumbling, at his teaching. To say, why would I listen to this guy? He doesn't even pay what honorable men pay to the temple. But even though that seems like a really trivial matter for Jesus to be willing to pay this, what it really points to, what it really prefigures, is this is the Lord of all creation, the King of the world, the one to whom all creation bows down to, who's voluntarily willing to take upon himself the sins of the whole world, to pay not just his tax to the temple, but to pay to drink the entire cup of God's wrath, to pay for the sin of the world, to ransom, to make atonement for the sin of the world. And this is a powerful, beautiful sort of revelation that hit my heart huge, that this action of Jesus being willing to comply with this prefigures what he's been telling his 12 that he's getting ready to do, which is to be crucified and to be raised 3 days later. Third thing I think it points to in terms of his freedom is that he is the King of glory, that he is the one who is a miracle maker, that as I've said over and over, where the king goes, the kingdom goes. The king and kingdom are connected. And it's not all future. Some of it is now. There's a lesson I think we can gather from this miracle, and that's that we have here in this story the supernatural glory which accompanies Jesus, even as he's humble, even as he is emptied himself, as Philippians 2 says, of everything that's rightfully his, and taken on the form of a servant and become obedient even unto death. He's still, wherever he goes, particularly now he's been transfigured, where his glory, it just radiates out of him, and it does here in the form of the miraculous. And the fourth way that I would say that that this matters is when there's a plural here, to say that, that the sons are free, or that he has there will be enough money in the fish for your tax and mine. He doesn't say ours. The plural there doesn't mean that somehow he and Peter are on level footing, that I'm paying, our tax will be paid. He's saying, I pay my tax because I'm voluntarily choosing to. You owe it because you do need atonement for your sins, if we go back to Exodus 30, and because you are under their authority. You aren't the king. And so basically, I would say this: we all, if we were to be in Peter's shoes, we would be facing a very similar thing. And that's this, that how are you going to meet your obligation? How will I meet my obligation when I think about what it means one day to stand before the Lord and to reconcile the ledger of what's been done for me, of what I owe? I owe the Lord everything. I owe him my love, my heart, my will, my strength, my service. And when I stop and think about it, I think, man, he's paid it all, but yet still I accumulate a lot of unpaid debt with a lot of interest because of I guess sometimes the lukewarmness in my heart, or my failure to love him, to give him, all that he deserves. And so, imagine if there was some sort of bankrupt, poor soul, sitting in his office, in his home office, looking down at his books, looking at Quicken on the computer, whatever, and he sees this balance sheet laid before him, and he knows he's hopelessly broke. And he sits there and he broods over it, and he doesn't know what in the world he's ever going to do. And then the door busts open, and a messenger comes entering in and gives him an envelope, and he tears it open, and there in the envelope is a check that more than pays all of his debt. And I mean, I know this is a kind of a really hokey, low illustration. It could be, and the reason it's so low is because it doesn't come close to touching the whole ground of what Jesus has done for you and for me and for all who will receive what he's paid for. But we have to take stock of where we are. If we are not in him, we are the bankrupt ones. And what do we have in and of ourselves to pay eternally for what's been done for us? And so I just want to close here this week. We'll pick it back up next week. I want to pray, Father, that we might behold the precious treasure of the gold that you provide for us that's been refined in the fire, which is your righteousness and your death, your sacrificial gift on our behalf, which you say that we can receive by faith in you. All of us who take and give, and all the debt that should be on my account, on our account, will be discharged, will be wiped away, and that we would be set free and made sons by that Son, you, Jesus, who took upon yourself everything that was rightfully ours, all of our bonds, all of our brokenness. You've taken that all upon yourself, and you've canceled all of these debts. And so, Lord Jesus, we see your kingship in this passage, and we acknowledge you as King of all. In Jesus' name, amen. And Maranatha.
Hey folks, thanks for watching the Maranatha Global Bible Studies. We pray that these resources encourage you. It has been a value to us from the beginning of FAI to produce quality media to resource the global body and give it away for free and free forever. Now that said, if you want to join us in reaching those who do not have the gospel, we invite you to jump in on our $5 a month giving campaign. Literally skip a coffee and you can change the face of the Middle East in the 1040 window. Head to faistudios.org where you can give safely and securely. Maranatha.